We will. I'll comment on the questions of ADHD and ASD probably at the end. There's a few things here to talk about, and the order in which we do them is a bit arbitrary, but I think I'll leave those to the end, particularly the question of ASD, because that's the trickiest one for me today. What we've done today, the first section of the testing was an intelligence test, or some people call it a test of cognitive ability. Basically, it gives us an idea of how smart someone can act at this point in time. And the other part of the testing was achievement testing. So looking at that gives us two things. So one is each of those subtests or skills tests, if you like, give us a ranking. So we're, say, in a mythical group of 100 Year 7 kids.
Where are we?
Where's if it, as the first kid in the line is the 100th kid in the line. But then also some of the other tests that we did are me trying to look at, so say, for example, with reading comprehension, which is low, what aspects of comprehension might you have difficulty with? Because comprehension's an incredibly broad church. So some of those things were my attempt to kind of get into a little bit of detail. Rather than just saying, look, he's poor at these things. So those are two parts to the testing. So let's start with the so-called intelligence test. Intelligence really it's just the functioning of the human nervous system. So you take away our skeleton, our skin and muscles and so on, you're left with the nervous system. And intelligence is basically how we can't measure the nervous system directly, obviously. So what we measure is behaviour, which is driven by the nervous system. So basically, everything we've done today and everything you see in daily life, everything that we do, is essentially the tool, the body, doing stuff that the nervous system tells it to do. Obviously, I'm leaving out instinctive things there. But that's essentially intelligence is the functioning of the nervous system, which then drives our behaviour. So the purpose of an intelligence test is to get the kids or the person to do a bunch of different intelligent activities or activities that require intelligence, and then you get a ranking, as I said before, which is an estimate. So it's not an exact measurement. It's not like we can measure how tall he is or how many breaths per minute he takes. It's an estimate, and what we use it for is prediction. So you use it to predict performance on other tasks. So there's 10 different tests on that subtest that I did on that test we did this morning, which is called the WISC. What happens is statistically scores on those tests cluster together. So basically they're all really strongly associated. So someone who's high on one will generally be higher on all of the others. Put another way, a high functioner or a high performer will tend to be higher than low performers on all of those subtests and vice versa. So when we're trying to predict something, so say we're trying to predict how well he'll do on, say, a maths problem solving task at school, the number that we get out of the intelligence test that best does the job of predicting his score on that problem solving task is what we call a full scale IQ. Basically, it's the average of all of those. It's not quite an average, but it's a weighted average technically, but call it the average. So is that one number that you get out of the IQ test. So his full scale IQ was 76. Which is, if you imagine we have 100 people, so if you imagine we have 100 kids his age, his score was equivalent to the 5th score in the line. So you got 100 scores from 100 kids, his was equivalent to that. Now, bear in mind, those tests measure how smart you can act. They don't actually measure, at least not directly, the quality of the intelligence in the human nervous system. They're measuring what's on the outside, how smart you can actually behave. So he may well be smarter than that, but at this point in time, this stage of development, and because we think he's got some attention problems, he's actually having trouble getting and keeping his act together and thinking and acting smart.
Yeah. Okay.
So he's not a great systematic problem solver. So looking at a problem, okay, well, this is the solution, or these are the steps that I have to go to get to the solution.
Yeah.
He's not great at then working his way systematically through that to arrive there at the final solution. Sometimes he gets the method, like early on with easy tasks, but then forgets it, or technically we call that losing set. So he might have a strategy in mind that's working, then he switches. Like,
I found that with the maths, we'd go over and over again, we'd lock it in and we'd, set the format, but then next time we'd have to go back over that format again and again.
Less knowledge, less general knowledge and vocabulary, it's hard to say, than average. So just, if you thought of his brain as like a computer, there's just less information in his hard drive than average. So, say he's reading and he comes across the word predict. If he doesn't know what that means, obviously it affects his comprehension. Yeah. And he's quite literal in the way that he interprets some things. Yeah. So, and don't immediately jump to ASD here. That this is more of a concrete thinker, perhaps. So, an example being, so we're doing a similarities task where we're asking, say, how a brother and sister are like. And so he got the first 9 or 10, 12 right. So he had a set or a strategy. So he knows brother and sister from the same family, frown and smile, both facial expressions. We got to how a river and a mountain are like. We get quite concrete. So a river comes from a mountain, which is not actually describing. It's a different form of thinking. So it's a concrete way of thinking. So it's correct. Rivers come from mountains, absolutely. So
but it's not. I know.
It's not that broader, logical, categorical kind of thinking.
Yeah.
So a little concrete there. I suppose you could say, and just generally has difficulty keeping his act together, which is possibly part of attention, which we'll come back to.
Yeah.
But I would say moving forward, we know, or in fact, going back to the history, we know that he has history of difficulty with new learning. So new learning's hard.
Yeah.
Now that might be because he doesn't value it. It might be because he's having difficulty arousing himself and keeping his what together. Yeah. But any which way, it takes him longer to learn most new things, not all.
Unless it's very unless it really hits the mark. Yeah.
Because that when you're turned on by something, that generates all of the arousal, and it's almost like
it makes you more receptive.
Boiling water and sugar down to a sugar syrup. You kind of get to you get to something really concentrated. So whereas something that's of low value, or if you're having to allocate energy and attention to 5 things instead of 1, you get this diffuse, vague, unconcentrated version. So he has difficulty with a bunch of things, but you're right. At times, he can kind of concentrate what he's got, boil it down to the sugar syrup, and then it's okay. He's got sufficient capacity then. But dealing with more broadly with school, which has lots of low value tasks, and it's really there's so many things to deal with. Obviously difficult. Please don't think that this means he's not intelligent. We actually can't make that inference. These data from today allow us to make the inference that he will perform around about the same sort of level on some other tasks right now. But there'll be a fair amount of variation in how good that prediction is. So say, for example, if we're measuring how well he can make free throws in basketball, he might be up here. Now, some people refer to that as a skill rather than an intelligence. Either way, there's going to be times when he'll be a whole lot better than that. Sometimes it will actually be even worse. As a broad summary, I'd say he's having difficulty acting smart consistently at this point.
Yeah.
So maybe if I now bring in the attention side of things. So you're reporting all of the inattentive symptoms of ADHD.
Yeah.
Difficult to get symptom reports from high school teachers.
And because he's not been there for very long.
Just moved, yeah.
I know, yeah.
So the criteria for ADHD are written for children. Technically for kids who are less than 12 years of age.
Yeah, I know. We've come at this at an awkward time in a way, but I didn't want to waste any more time.
Yeah. And we can manage it. I'm just saying that the criteria are technically for young kids. And so when you look at the criteria, it says you need symptom reports from multiple settings, so say from home and from teachers.
Yeah.
But in a practical sense with older people, with adults, it's hard to get those symptom reports from anywhere other than home.
Yeah.
There's a lot of high school teachers you just end up on those symptom reports with a lot of zeros because they don't know the kid or they don't have time.
Yeah.
With adults, almost impossible to get information from a workplace because it's too threatening for the adult to address it.
Yeah.
So you're left to deal with less than perfect information. But if we treat you as an expert here, which I think is true, you're an expert on your child, you're going to see him in a more broad range of contexts than anyone.
Yeah.
Okay? So you're reporting those symptoms.
Yeah.
It runs in the family. If we accept that you have ADHD, at least, we know stimulants have helped you.
Yeah.
ADHD does run in families. You can't prove a genetic link when you've just got one person in front of you. That data comes from big twin studies, but it gives you a bit of a clue. Yeah. Given how much difficulty he's having with acting and thinking smart consistently in general, so this is not just a problem with reading or with maths. He's having broader difficulty. And given that the stimulants help you act smarter in general, I'd be thinking about trying a stimulant.
Yeah.
Yep, and the breadth and the complexity of the high school curriculum is ridiculous.
Yeah.
And for someone who's there on average, he's already having difficulty. We will potentially continue to do so. We'll talk details in a sec. So I'd be less than conservative. I'd be trying a stimulant and seeing if. But basically, what those medications do is it gives you greater arousal, greater control over arousal and over your thought. Allows you to be more linear or systematic in your thought processes. We know that it improves test-taking behaviour and systematic behaviour in basically everyone. I think it's worth a shot. Yeah. Okay. I'll leave that one alone then, but let's get to his academic skills.
Sure.
I don't think at his age there's no need to go into an awful lot of detail about his basic reading and spelling skills. So I'll just make a list of what we're looking at. So dyslexia is your word reading weaknesses, if you like. That coupled with, so I said to you before that he knows less than average, so less vocabulary, less general knowledge, also a bit concrete in the way that he thinks. So those two things affect comprehension. Okay, so what happens when you read, so pretend we have a page of text in front of us, your word reading skills help you get what I call a signal up off the page. So the black squiggles represent spoken words, right? So your word reading skills unlock those words, and it's like, think of a radio signal, okay? If you have a dyslexia, the signal that's coming through will be fuzzy, or there'll be errors in it. So if we go to some of his actual responses today, he read stamps as stacks, Jack as Jake, restless as wrestle, prompt as promote. So it's not only fuzzy, but in some cases it's just wrong.
And that's when
So it's pretty hard to make good sense of a fuzzy or wrong signal. But plus, even if he had a perfect signal coming through, so even if he listened to something, which is not exactly the same as reading it, but pretend it is, his comprehension still wouldn't be great because you have the language and those the problem solving, those broader issues. Either way, comprehension's not great. He's okay with, we'll call it literal comprehension. So if it's who opened the parcel, Jane. As long as he can read the word okay. So in the story where he'd read Jack as Jake, and the question was, who tamed the lions, he would say Jake. Now, that's okay if he's the only character in the book starting with J, but if there's a Jack and a Jake, that causes a problem. Okay. But let's just say he's okay with literal comprehension, provided he can read the words. But what we call inferential comprehension, oops, that's an N. Let's just call that reading between the lines. So inferring things that are not there. So it might be why questions. So you know that Jack jumped off a bridge, but we don't know why. But you might infer that based upon times when you jumped off a bridge. The examples are almost never ending. Examples from what we did today were the lines near the beginning, the middle, or the end of their act? Now they were in their final act, so you have to infer from that word. It's obviously at the end. That's an example. So he's going to have trouble with things like that. And a lot of school these days involves that kind of comprehension. It's not read this book and tell me who the main character was and where they lived. It's a lot more than that, complicated than that. It's dealing with figurative language and so on. So that's going to be an issue. So again, there's definitely dyslexia there. So his word reading skills are not good, but it's also broader than that. So dysgraphia so dyslexia is problems with word reading. Dysgraphia is spelling. Okay. So you definitely have difficulties with spelling. Definitely. So we're end of year 7 and can't reliably spell friend. That's just an example, but it's not brilliant.
No.
But again, you've got or just called cognition in general. The problem solving feeds into it. So for example, the writing task that I gave him, so I gave him information. Dogs are mammals. They have fur and warm blood. They give birth to live babies. That's basically the characteristics of mammals. So I'm telling him about dogs there. Then cats are also mammals. So you and I would infer from, the task is then tell me what else you know about cats. You and I would infer because dogs equal cats and dogs have fur, warm blood, that's what you know about cats. He said they give birth to live babies too, which is true. So he's drawn part of the inference, but not the whole thing. Incidentally, no capital letter, no full stop. They were spelled incorrectly, and so was babies, which is that. But also his writing. So the purpose of spelling is to be able to communicate in writing. No other purpose. It's not to do a spelling test and get a marker. That's not the point. It's to communicate in writing. And the point of communicating in writing is to deliver a message, is to show or tell someone what you know about something. But if you don't know about it in the first place,
then you're just like you're trapped in a little box where it's hard to communicate.
That's right. So if he was the writer and I was the reader, or he was the teacher and I was the student, and he was having to give me stuff in writing, and what I wanted to know was everything he'd give me about cats. Even if he were a perfect speller, he's going to give me imperfect information. Because of those broader problems with cognition. Maths, so technically, I'm just going to use the term dyscalculia.
Yeah.
We don't know as much about maths as we do about reading and spelling. Dyscalculia, literally just think of it as an adjective that describes problems with maths.
Yeah.
He has difficulty with the basics, with what I call arithmetic. So table facts, even addition and subtraction facts are not solid.
Yeah.
So something like that doesn't have what we call stimulus control, like that doesn't generate an immediate 5.
Yeah.
Or that doesn't generate an immediate 63. It's slow, effortful. He might get there, but it might involve counting or drawing groups or something like that. It's like you were describing the problem with teaching him the algorithm for division. That's fine, but if you don't know that, that's 63, and therefore there's 9 7s in 63.
Yeah, and we could only do it with the multiplication chart to refer to, because it was, little ones are hard, but then working out bigger ones. And then the walls just go, when it gets too hard, and it just shuts down. And then you won't take anything on it. Oh, that's at home, in that home environment, which might be different at school, but
I'm just making a note for myself here. We need to talk about something. So he has we'll call it those more basic weaknesses with what you and I at our age would have called, sorry, I know I'm older than you probably, but arithmetic. The curriculum nowadays doesn't work as much on arithmetic as they did in the 70s and 80s when we might have been at primary school, so they get far less practice at it. So kids nowadays are less good at arithmetic than we were. Okay. In general, they're better at problem solving because they do more of that. Okay. He also has difficulty with problem solving for 2 reasons. One, because problem solving depends on that, even though they don't practice it enough. Still depends upon knowing this stuff, but also because of those broader issues with cognition. So probably having difficulty, or historically had difficulty with learning your math facts and so on, because he has that broader difficulty with keeping his act together, and learning something abstract like 12 takeaway 7s. What? It doesn't. And nor is there the payoff. Like if I do this, I get the ball in the basket. There's no immediate payoff. And then also those broader problem-solving aspects of the curriculum require you to, 1, learn a concept, which requires you to pay attention to it, but 2, to be systematic, step by step, and work your way through it. So he's having difficulty with all of those things. One other thing before we get to what we might do about it, I made the note for myself here before. You were saying earlier that you haven't seen him read as much lately. He seems to avoid it with writing. And you mentioned trying to teach these facts early on, that he was a bit he didn't want to do it. That's unsurprising to me. So it's now a complicating factor. The right term is conditioning. So what happens if you have, say you have twins that start out kindergarten, one's, let's just use maths as the example. One's just naturally good at maths. Who the hell knows why? They just are. The other one's not. So the first time that the kid is exposed to this kindergarten, that's not going to be. Let's go something slightly real. Oops. 2 plus 2. And they can work it out. It might be this, or it might be however. And they get 4, whether they just tell the teacher or mum that, or they're able to write it down. That's getting the answer, and sometimes getting a yay, well done, or whatever it is, or at least not getting a no, you're wrong, try harder, is reinforcement. It's like a reward, if you like. So not only are they more likely to give that same response next time, and therefore get it correct a second time, but they start to associate maths, not only that problem but other number problems, with the availability of pleasure and reinforcement. So you mentioned dopamine before. Dopamine, most people get this wrong, dopamine is not a pleasure drug. You don't get dopamine.
It's a reward.
No, it's not.
Okay.
It kind of could be a little bit, but this is where people get it wrong.
Yeah.
Dopamine doesn't fire when you get the answer or when you get the yay, well done. Dopamine appears when you see that.
Right.
If this problem has a history of giving you reinforcement.
Okay, all right.
Dopamine's a signaller.
Yeah.
It's not a pleasure drug.
Yeah.
It's a signaller. It tells you, hey, there's reinforcement or pleasure available here.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah.
I shouldn't say pleasure because sometimes often dopamine will signal that there's the opportunity to escape something that you don't want here.
Yeah.
Okay. But so this mythical twin who's good at it gets conditioned to see number problem, not just that one. So, hey, and dopamine will fire, right? Hey, there's reinforcement available. I'll get myself up and pay attention to this, so they get it right for the third time.
And then that just further creates the neural pathways and the conditioning.
It's like the puppy's now sat 3 times and got the treat. We're on our way. Yeah. But the kid who finds it difficult may not get the answer, or it may be painful. There may be some, inadvertently a teacher or mum and dad might go, come on mate, come on. It's seen as punishing, not only...
Further makes it go the other direction.
Correct. Yeah, you become conditioned to see that as like an electric fence. Yeah. Stay away from it.
That's what I thought, which is why I've just laid off until we got through this process. And then I thought we'll wait and do all this and we'll see what the paediatrician says and whether or not about medication or whatnot. And then look at, private tutoring or whatever, whatever is recommended. But I thought there's no point pushing it until we know what we're...
Yeah. You're right. So that conditioning process, and you could call it a negative conditioning process, if you like, explains why he has an aversion to these things, because a book, a writing task is like an electric fence to him. So he then engages in escape behaviours, which are often successful, right? So you keep doing them. I call them complicating factors because they don't explain the problem in the first place. So he came to school with a set of things, factors, genes, whatever you want to call it, that made the task difficult. What these aversion factors or conditioning factors do now is reduce his practice time.
Yeah, that's it.
So that mythical twin gets richer because they practice more.
Practice,
The poor get relatively poorer, not actually poorer.
I know, in skills.
Just less practice.
In the skills.
Yeah, that's right. It's like, so our sons are the same age. He's going to practice more basketball than my boy will. Who's going to get richer? The one that practices. Even if my boy has better genes, sure he doesn't, but let's just say he does, your boy's going to practice more. He's still going to get better. So practice time's critical, and these conditioning factors just cut down on total practice time. Okay, so what do we do?
What do we do?
We've already talked about attention and stimulant or other. I really do think that's worth a go. It's it's not a treatment, so you could film you could film me full of Ritalin. I still can't speak Japanese. So I think of those medications as learning tools.
That's exactly what I see them as well.
Okay, cool. I won't say any more about that then. Worth a go. In terms of, let's perhaps talk more broadly. I said to you before when we were talking about so-called intelligence that predicting what he's going to be like in, say, 10 years is a bit of a dangerous game. Because even predicting his performance now on a range of tasks is going to have some error. The basketball versus the maths task or whatever it is. The further away in time we go from now, the less accurate any prediction's going to be.
So many factors at play here.
That's right. Particularly given you're going to try a stimulant, which is known to improve your ability to think smart. And one other thing, related thing, we know that let's use basketball as an analogy. So kids, you play basketball in most sporting age groups, right? Well-established fact that kids who are at the older end of the age bracket are generally the ones that get picked for elite teams.
Mm.
The reason for that is twofold. One is, say you start like under 9s.
Yeah.
Motor skills and a lot of other things are associated with age, with development.
Yeah.
So the kids who are nearly 9 as opposed to who've just turned 8 have an advantage. If they're then selected for the under 9 rep team, they get better coaching.
Mm. And then
so they're actually, the older ones or the young ones are actually exposed to different environments.
Yeah.
So the improvement in these older ones is not necessarily because they were always destined to be better players, but because they have better quality environments.
Yeah.
So what you're hoping with medication is that you're going to be exposing him now to a different sort of environment. Talked about the lack of accuracy in predicting 10 years down the track, but if you will allow me, just don't take this as gospel. I suspect he's going to be better at more, let's call them concrete occupations.
Yeah.
So something that has set tasks and methods.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So there's no reason why I need a plumber at the moment. It's just why this has come to being a plumber. You don't actually have to work out how to plumb a house or invent how to plumb. It's a set of methods that you're taught.
Yep.
Or same with being an electrician.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, I have had contact with a company recently where an electrician has used his knowledge to invent a new product. It's basically like a electric skateboard for water. I won't bore you with the details, but he's been able to take his knowledge set and apply that to think, so that could work here and this will work that one. I'm not saying he can't do that, but he'll have more difficulty with those sorts of tasks. So just
I can relate to that as well. On a personal level.
And there's lots of human occupations that require that kind of thought. So, but just a lot of education's not going that way. Education's going the other way. We're valuing, so society is valuing more scientific, logical, sequential thought, which is it's basically making school more and more difficult for people who are not that way equipped or inclined. Anyway, so that's the long term. In the short term, don't forget about, but just put any labels aside. Think of skills, whether they be spelling, writing, communication skills, math skills, as a set of behaviours. Absolutely no different. They technically are, but in our analogy here, think of them as no different from a set of behaviours that you want to train a puppy. Okay. I use a lot of puppy training analogy because I train a lot of dogs. My puppy would normally be here today. Okay. You missed out. So when you get a new puppy, you think, right, these 50, 100 things what I would want this dog to be able to do to keep it safe and live with my family. And what you do is to be a good trainer, you have to specify what does, like even something like sit, what does that mean? Is it here beside me? Is it 90 degrees? Where's its head? Right? Because what that does as a trainer, it allows you to give that puppy really clear information. But you want your ball, you sit parallel here. Because when you do that, you get your ball. If you sit at 45 degrees, no ball. Exactly the same as if you want your ball, metaphorically, you give me 4. And if we do, each time you do that, it's a learning trial. You do it often enough, that gets control over that behaviour in the same way that Sid gets control over the dog's bum going on the ground, or to keep going with the basketball analogy, boom, 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 3 times, a certain push of the elbow and a certain flip of the wrist gets the ball into the net. Every time you do that, it's a learning trial. It's giving your brain information that says, right, when we have the intent to do this, these are the things that we do in response. So we've got to get really, really specific about what we want to train. And a lot of the curriculum tasks are going to be too big and too hard. So for example, you're going to go to science next year, and they'll do a little bit of playing with Bunsen burners and burning stuff, and what temperature does this burn, and so on. But the curriculum's also requiring them to learn research skills and to write research reports and to evaluate evidence, and that's a nightmare. Yeah. It's going to be a whole bunch of that. It's going to be really hard. Now, the problem is we want this kid to be, let's just say we want him to be a plumber or a sparky, or we might want him to be a NASA scientist. I'm not limiting him here at all. Right?
He needs the fundamental,
Not only that, but he needs practice at learning how to think.
Yeah.
And not seeing these things as aversive and to be escaped.
Yeah.
So our job as trainers, like with the puppy, your job is actually to set up training situations that put the dog under low pressure, or the kid under low, because if you ping the nervous system, it's like a boss spin at you.
Yep, I know, that's it. And then you're
learning's not going to happen.
Okay, I'm done,
Yep, exactly.
So and you've got to create the space that's more conducive to
that's right.
the information sticking.
That's right.
Yeah.
And also to allow him to correctly perform the behaviour in question.
Yeah.
So if we keep mixing my analogies here, but if we take the puppy to a dog park to teach it how to sit, that's not good training.
No, it's too much stimulation, too much stuff,
Correct.
external stimulus.
Yeah, and what's going to happen if our intent is to teach it to sit, it's going to be running around madly, and you're going to be jerking on the lead and whacking it. You should never really whack your dog.
We'll yell at it, or we'll be getting, we'll be giving unclear signals.
That's right, and the big dog's nervous system's worked up. And then what happens is that puppy gets conditioned to see supposedly the big dog as freaky and to be avoided. Yeah. So next time we try to put them in the car, take them to the dog park, they're like, I don't want to go.
Yeah.
So we got to forget about the curriculum.
Yeah.
We technically can't. We do what we can.
Yeah.
But we've got to try to pick parts of it. Yeah. Even if they're things from way back, and the intent has got to be to teach him that he can learn. He can go from not knowing to knowing. Yeah. We need to do that under low pressure. Yeah. Design tasks so he gets success. Yeah. So you're starting the reconditioning process of seeing some academic tasks as a source of pleasure. Yeah. See that dopamine fires, which remember happens before you actually get the pleasure. Yeah. So that, say he goes to TAFE, or say he goes into a business, or he might even start running his own business, and he comes across tasks that are not necessarily numbers, but just problems or unknown, new things that he has prior experience of. Okay, this might be a little tough, but this is like all these other times where I put my head down and I can. Whereas at the moment, what he's learning is that let's avoid. Yeah. And he might be, and he'll go and say prioritise a skill, so say shooting hoops, over the intelligent behaviour, which is fine.
But you can't get through high school shooting hoops alone. Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, that's
So what I'd be doing is wait till you see the end. Yeah. So we both know that medication, if it works, and you can't guarantee it, but if it does work, it's kind of like your cake batter. Yeah. It gives you that nice, more solid sponge cake on which you can stack your icing. Yeah. Teaching someone how to do long division is fancy icing. If you don't have the cake in place, it's no good to you. So do that, and then number one principle is we've got to train under low pressure, so we use nervous systems in a parasympathetic or a calm state. Okay. To me, I'd be using that analogy of puppy training. train specific behaviours. So just doing maths tutoring, or let's do some maths. It's like taking a puppy for a walk and hoping it's going to learn something. It's not going to work. You'll just end up pulling on the lead too much.
Which is why I backed off until we just I could see that it wasn't.
I agree. Back off. You're better off not doing anything rather than doing something that doesn't work. Because if you do something that goes wrong, it makes tomorrow worse. If you do nothing, at least tomorrow's not worse. It's the same as today.
And then we're getting frustrated, and then he's getting,
Yeah, exactly. So I think that was definitely a smart thing to do. So you use that analogy, specific behaviours, train under low pressure, and the purpose, two reasons. One is to recondition him. So instead of seeing academic tasks as aversive and to be escaped, he needs to see them as a source of... Correct. And I'd be pitching it to him, even at his age, as, mate, this is just a chance to learn how to learn. To learn how to... It's not about learning 2 + 2, it's because at the end of the day, who really cares? This is just an opportunity to teach you how to think, in the same way that shooting hoops against the garage helps you shoot hoops in a game. It's not the real skill. That's why we're doing it. And we're trying to massage him through school, trying to minimise negative effects, and just trying to get him to the point where he can get into work or other study where he can specialise. So we can go from all of this at school, which is really broad but also really shallow, you don't get much time to learn anything. Constrict, if you're going to become a plumber, you don't also study electrical work. So more time to do things deeply, develop expertise. All right, I've been waffling on for a long time. Questions? Throw them at me.
Well, what is the best way then to do that? Like with a tutor, I'm guessing, or like are there other?
Yeah, with a good puppy trainer. Look, it depends who does it. Depends upon how much skill you have around you. So it just goes to show, doesn't it, that if there's a reason to do it, and that's all you have to learn, you can't, because it's just a method. So, and that's the thing with puppies too, just you take your time. So if you're stressing, we want to learn sit down, drop, come, stay.
You've got to make it fun.
Yes, it's got to be worthwhile.
Treats are great.
And if you're not having fun as the trainer either, so let's say to people I'm training how to train, you also got to have fun. Because if you're not having fun...
No one else is,
No, exactly. You've got to enjoy your puppy, enjoy your kids. So anyway, back to your question. I think maths is... let's go English and other things, that they're almost never ending. So you can help someone through their, say, term 4, year 7 English assignment. It's not going to transfer to next year, at least not very much. Whereas if you learn how to do long division, that remains the same next year, year after in year 12. So I think there's a bit more reward for effort. And so perhaps using a tutor, family members, whatever, school learning support, whatever, I'll just have if you've got multiple people working with him, we just need to be really clear that this is the behaviour we're teaching, so let's just say long division as the example. This is how we're doing it, because sit can mean lots of different things. So you can teach someone how to sit or do long division in different ways, but the actual end behaviour has to look the same. So, getting your team on the right page and then pitching it to everyone, including him, that this is not so much about learning long division. This is our opportunity to teach you how to think in a way that's going to be useful for you down the track. That's how you got to pitch it and think about it.
All right.
And that's, look, just a personal example. It's no different. There's some my son's same age, but he's in year 8. I don't think I've come across anything much in his schooling that is actually going to apply to what might be his profession. So even what he learns in science, they're broad skills.
Yeah.
So, evaluating, someone says this is fact, but let's actually evaluate the evidence behind it.
Yeah.
Unless, so say that's Ritalin causes cancer.
Yeah.
Unless he's going to become a pharmacologist,
yeah,
the actual evidence for that is immaterial.
Yeah.
But it's the broad skills that are useful, or in maths. I say to him, maths is I call it a 0 or 1. You're either competent or you're not. So a C in maths is crap.
Yeah.
In the sense that if you're a C at landing an aeroplane, you're going to kill a lot of people.
Yeah.
So you're either competent or you're not. And the reason I put it like that is because I want him to think, what I don't want him to think is that, half landing an aeroplane is okay.
Yeah.
And it's like some people can't land aeroplanes, and that's okay, right? But if you're capable of landing the aeroplane, you might as well just do the job.
Properly. Yeah.
So what's the point of doing a half-assed job if you can do it? And I'd argue if you're giving, slightly off topic, but if you're giving people a job that they can only do half the job of, or don't get them to land the plane in the first place. That's a training error.
Yeah.
That's a problem at teaching, not of the kid, but where the kid has the capacity to land the plane, don't half land it. Do the job, because then, like, say he might become a psychiatrist. That's what he wants to do. If you do a half-assed job of prescribing medication for someone, that's really dangerous. So why train your brain to do it in a half-assed way?
Yeah.
So, coming back to your boy, let's set up situations where he can do things well. So do less, but try to do things well, and that's what we're trying. That's the way we're trying.
Okay.